Pinkertons Ghosts is a horror anthology podcast by Superversive Radio, with no affiliation with any detective agency, person, real or imagined, or the dark forces of Outre Terre. It is not intended for children. This is Jim Donavan, and I'm finishing up my previous report leading up to the events surrounding the scouring of vampiric forces from the Castaway restaurant in Burbank, California. As I previously stated, my new girlfriend, Jenny Carrera, had started working for a casting agency that was run by my former acquaintance, Lily, of the Ghost Baby case. Mordred Padam was either an associate or business partner of hers. He surprised me during a visit to Jenny's workplace and explained that he had information regarding the vampire that turned my former girlfriend, Marie. He also implied that Jenny was in danger from the same creature, but I was more interested in vengeance at the time to really register the threat to her. I had exchanged a few polite words with Jenny and Lily, making an excuse for why I couldn't stay and eat. Well, I didn't technically lie to her. I said that there was a new case that demanded my full and undivided. I gave Jenny a little peck on the cheek and made to walk outside. It was tough seeing Jenny right next to Lily. Lily was the literal embodiment of feminine beauty, and Jenny, while certainly not bad, a solid Hollywood 7, couldn't really compare. I know Sean had talked about meeting the Greek goddess Hera, but I'm pretty sure even she would be in a competition here. Even Paris of Troy would have a hard time finding the proper winner in this beauty pageant. I had shaken Mordred's hand as he was leaving, and he'd slipped me a piece of paper. It read, Murray Goldstein, Castaway Restaurant at midnight, 3 days hence. There was a number on the card, along with the name Janine. I called the number. Woman picked up. Mortimer Drout's office. How may I help you, Mr. Donavan? I hate dealing with foes that are so much older than I am. They plan for every contingency with an ease that truly puts the special forces to shame. I decided to be upfront. Do me a favor, Janine. She made a sound of affirmation. Who is Murray Goldstein? I am very surprised you've not heard of him. Mr. Goldstein is a producer, currently preparing to integrate the Star Wars Expanded Universe with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We have had dealings with him since Lepanto. Is that a production company or something? It was a famous sea battle in the 16th century. What do they teach in schools these days, Mr. Donavan? Pronouns, mostly. Thanks, Janine. Oh, since you know about him, is there anything I should be made aware of? Mr. Goldstein was ancient when my lord first walked as a mortal. If you know anything about vampires, I'd keep that in mind. Oh, and there will be a large attendance at the gala, but I don't think you'll need to worry about collateral damage to mortals, if you get my drift. Thanks, Janine. It is our pleasure, Mr. Donavan. Oh, and Mr. Drout has instructed me to request if you prefer the fee of $50,000 in cash, jewels, or Bitcoin. I'm getting paid? She laughed. No one works for Mr. Drout for free, Mr. Donavan. It's cheaper than a real favor, if you catch my drift. I do. Cash, please. I paused for a second and asked, Can I get any magical artifacts to deal with Murray? She giggled a bit. Oh, I'm afraid not, Mr. Donavan. Why not? We don't trust you with them. Good luck. I hung up. Weirdest phone call I'd ever had. I went home. The second I stepped through the door, Gordon O'Hedesy, the disembodied head of some unknown power, said loudly, Oi, boyo! Where's with the smell of death you got on yous? He was in my kitchen. He was riding on Lizzie's back. I had made him a little saddle so that he could get around the apartment easier. He could always sort of roll around, but now he could perch on her back and hold a little bar in his teeth to prevent falling off. It is the most ridiculously awesome thing I've ever made. I'm super proud of it. It's so cute. I'll send you pictures someday, Control. I met Mordred Padam today. Oh! Gordon fangirl squeed a bit. You mean Arthur's nephew and Moira? That Mordred? Oh, you meet all the best people. He hired me to kill the vampire that sired Marie, Gordon. I said, not willing to banter. Oh, wow, the head said, in a more subdued tone. That's a big deal for you, Jim. You gonna be okay? I'm not sure. I've made arrangements with Jack to be your next caretaker, I guess, in case I don't make it. I hope he checks his messages. Ah, great. Jack. Weak conversationalist, but at least the food will be good. Vampire, though. You barely survived a Marie, Jim. Do you think you can handle her sire? Do you even know if he's a young vamp or some sort of ancient master? His name's Murray Goldstein. Apparently he's been alive long enough to be considered a legend when Mordred was alive. Murray Goldstein? The producer? Nah, let it go, Jim. You're good, but you're not ready for this. In fact, you know what? Just forget you ever heard of Marie. She's dead and in hell, which is frankly safer than you are if you go up against the thing you call Murray. I'd never seen Gordon so nervous. I'd never seen him express any real emotion beyond wry contempt for mortal life. What's the hubbub, bub? I asked. You don't want to know, Jim. Seriously. This thing has had enough power and influence to start wars in countries he didn't even care about, and he's evil enough to do it just because he's bored. Hollywood has distracted him, but, let's just say he hated Cecil Rhodes, the colonialist and vampire hunter. Stay home and work on your little projects. Maybe find out who set Jack up. I stared at him. I went to the refrigerator. He still can't open that yet. And I took out a ribeye. Prime grade. I stared him in the eye as I took it over to the sink, turned on the water, and started the garbage disposal. And slowly started to lower the steak inch by inch toward the churning blades. Gordon caved. Fine, all right. I stopped lowering the steak, but continued to hold it over the sink. Look, it's no big secret. This guy? He's not just old. He's stupid old. There are only a few masters wandering around as old as this guy. You know your buddy Sean has that ring that allows him to see into the veil? Like you do? He calls the ability the gift of Elisha, which is, of course, ludicrous because... I started lowering the steak back into the sink. Gordon shouted to get me to stop. The important thing is, Elisha had a slave, a guy named Gehazi. Gehazi does something stupid. Elisha curses him with something the Bible calls leprosy, which was kind of a catch-all disease for anything that made your skin super white and your body start to necrotize. Unfortunately for Gehazi, he didn't catch your run-of-the-mill leprosy. No. He caught straight-up hematophagous porphyria, also known as vampirism, for the layman. This guy has been alive since the Bible, I asked, disbelieving it was even possible. Oh, sure. Most vampires are at least some form of super old. This guy is just older than most. Age does weird things to the undead. Not all of them can properly grasp the threads of the universe and wield magic, which means they can only plot and scheme as the mortals do. However, as God said after the flood, in blood there is life. That's why any human that drank blood was to be put to death. Because blood is a sort of gateway to life and youth. The cost, of course, being one's eternal destination. Once that barrier gets crossed, I don't know of a way back. I've never heard of a vampire finding Jesus, after all. Though I have heard some rumors that Barabbas was, until Jesus took his place on the cross. If this thing was as old as Gordon said... Wait a minute. Hey, Gordon, how do you know about this thing? Jim, you have a head that is currently riding on the back of your somewhat sentient lizard. Why do you think I wouldn't know about these things? Lizzie lifted her head and bleated at me. Traitor. Fine, point taken, I said. He's going to be at a big party over at Castaway. Apparently there won't be any human staff on hand, but I'm willing to bet that several will be there as appetizers. Any suggestions? Yeah, if you go, don't eat the canopies. I had turned the garbage disposal off and set the steak down. At this comment, I flicked the switch back on. All right. Look, I wouldn't worry about the riffraff. Go in, however you might like a paper-thin disguise. And make sure, the only thing you target is Murray. And you should walk out fine. Vampires are generally pretty cowardly once their leader dies. I mean, the thing all vampires fear is death. And if you kill the oldest thing there, all the rest will follow suit. If, however, you start indiscriminately killing things, the odds are good that the pack will eat you alive. Huh, I said. I'd never fought more than one vampire before. Even though I was aware of some of their behaviors, I had never heard this about vampires being cowardly. I suppose it makes sense. They made a pact with the devil, and they know better than most what awaits them if they should ever die. I can't imagine that really provides much in the way of restful slumber. Maybe that's why they sleep in coffins. They fake peaceful repose, knowing they'll never see it. I still had my anti-vampire arsenal from the time I hunted down Marie. I still had a cane with a silver tip. I still had the holy water chewing gum, which was so bizarrely effective. I had shotgun shells modified to fire dragon's breath rounds, as well as little water balloons that had been stuffed with holy water. While the water dispersed very quickly, based on what holy water did to Marie, I'm very certain it'd be quite effective, if I could get up close. Unfortunately, long-distance options don't always work on vampires. Flames are effective, as is holy water, as purifying and cleansing agents. It is hard to fire either of those from a 308 sniper. I picked up the soul stone and pondered. My guardian angel and the demon god Loki had both warned me against using magic, and lately I'd not only been using it, but using it in increasingly clever and powerful ways, if I may say so myself. I was becoming dependent. There's a sort of surge control when you tap into the Verum Vicio, a power that I never felt any other time. It's euphoric, like being at the precipice of a giant roller coaster, right before you hurtle down some dizzying drop. I love it. But I needed to listen to my angel. I needed to do this through mortal means. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't take the soul stone with me, just in case. You never know what might be needed. Besides, I can't see in the dark, and vampires can. A little magic couldn't hurt, after all. Also, I needed a disguise, and since I had a couple days, I could spend the time pumping magic in, a bit at a time, into the stone. Ever since Sean had come to visit, I had been experimenting with disguising myself with magic, and given enough time, I could make myself, well, not invisible. Trying to block light from bouncing off my body was far too complicated right now. But I could sort of distract people's attention away from me. Implant a little white noise in their heads to make them more likely to ignore me. I practiced it like I did all my mind manipulation magic on Gordon, and took his tips to strengthen the magical field. The day of the gala came. Castaway isn't far from where I live. It's literally just a drive past a fancy golf course, up in the LA mountains. A lovely area in the fall and winter, but absolutely disgusting in the summer. Everything is brown and dead up there. I thought about parking. There's a narrow winding road up to Castaway, perfect for an ambush. There are some side pathways, though, that lead from the restaurant to the golf course below. If necessary, I could retreat to the mountains. I remembered all this because I had taken Marie there on a date. I blew an entire week's paycheck on the best meal I'd ever eaten. I was too nervous to taste any of it. I remember that night so well. She wore a light blue dress, her hair done up in coils that took it off her neck and pillowed it in top like a basket. It was the night I proposed, and the night she shot me down. Yeah, never told you about that, Control. What can I say? I left out and lied about a few details in the report last year. Can you blame me? Over the next couple nights, I left little dead drops around Castaway. I'd escape down a side path and, if necessary, blast a fang face with my holy water squirt gun that I had stashed in a backpack that I had hidden behind a rock. Or hit something with Emir's Tears, the ice wraith sprites that froze on contact. I had a spare shotgun that I hid too, just in case. Loaded with dragon's breath, also just in case. What's one more wildfire if it makes one vampire bite the dust? Suddenly, without truly realizing the time as it passed, the day was here. I spent it in prayer. I was going to do something stupid in order to avenge Marie. I hadn't even asked Janine if Ginny was in danger, like Mordred had implied. There was no way I was going into this confrontation without some prayer. I drove my car to the golf course and parked it on a side street, about a quarter mile from Castaway. I walked over. I was loaded for bear, soulstone dangling from a chain around my neck, shotgun cradled in my arms, holy water chewing gum in my mouth. I had a big-ass knife in a sheath strapped to my back, the hilt just over my right shoulder for easy draw. And I had my holy water squirt gun, fully pumped and pressurized, on my left shoulder, the hilt pointing down to my lower back. I had on my fanny pack, loaded with various ice, shock, and holy water throwables. I arrived at the restaurant. There was heavy trance music playing, blaring, really. There were no lights on that I could see. Makes sense. Vampires can see in the dark, and humans are terrified of it. And scared humans taste better, I hear. The adrenaline, you see. I could hear shrieks coming in over the music, even from 100 yards away. I saw squad cars in the parking lot, but no police were present or making arrests. Guards stood watch, but not a single one noticed me, as my profile was nigh invisible in the Visio. There were no guard dogs. I don't know why not. They probably would have smelled me. I walked past the valet booth. There were some pale, thin men in vests, standing at the ready for more guests to arrive. The banquet hall was on my right. The restaurant itself was shut down and locked tight. I walked into the hall and saw things I'll never forget. Remember, Control, that my sight had been augmented. I could see in the dark almost as clearly as daylight. I saw dozens of tables, hundreds of chairs, and in each chair was a man, woman, or thing sitting. Most of those seated had people kneeling beside them. You could see quite a few guests feeding on their attending mortals. Never enough to kill. The night was young, after all, but taking little sips here and there. There were some guests that were almost feral, and they pounced on their kneeling mortals, and rather than simply drink them, the vampire ripped large, meaty chunks out of their victims. These tables had been arrayed in a sloppy circle, leaving a space in the middle where 10 young women danced, totally naked. I could see that they were covered head to toe in blood. They were either drugged or hypnotized, so that their fear did not stop them from dancing. Dancing, ever dancing. Occasionally, a suited and dignified man would take a dancer and escort her over to an area that was somehow even darker than pitch black. I could not see what went on in there, but I could hear the screams that echoed out from the sable darkness. This was a blood orgy. And yes, I use orgy in its classical meaning too, because there were dozens of couples, threesomes, etc., all mid-coitus. If Hieronymus Bosch were still alive, even he would have nightmares from this hellish triptych. I walked to the area of utter darkness, in the midst of pitch-black debauchery. I steeled myself for what I saw. Can't even describe it, Control. It was foul. It was beyond foul. It was vile. But I saw Mordred Padam sitting in the midst of it, sipping idly from a wine glass. Of all people, he was drinking white wine, it appeared. He looked bored, even a little angry. Seated next to him was the man whom IMDb called Murray Goldstein. He was talking to another vampire. All 3 men were ignoring the foulness around them. I stepped closer to listen to him as he talked. And that's when we make it clear that the Jedi are just an ancient form of X-Men. The merchandising opportunities will be through the roof. Can you imagine us getting Baby Yoda in an Avengers uniform? We'll make more money in marketing than the original trilogy ever touched at the box office. I cocked my shotgun. No one could see me. No one could hear me. But Mordred, somehow, pushed himself casually from the table, and his chair slid a few feet away. He continued lazily sipping his beverage. I released my control of the Visio, and immediately became visible to all around me. I raised my shotgun and said, "For Marie." Murray had a second of confusion on his face, followed by terror and rage. I didn't see if he had any other emotions because a shotgun shell full of holy water caught him squarely in the chest and face. The vampire he was sitting next to also caught some of it, and it began screaming and hissing, clawing at his face. Murray was made of sterner stuff, staggered but not incapacitated. I cocked the shotgun, hit him again, this time with dragon's breath. Both men were engulfed in a raging inferno that shot out 40 feet behind Murray. Several other vampires were caught in the blast. They ran for it. Oops. Buckshot blasted chunks of flesh out of his torso. Using the Visio, I stoked the flames that were already burning merrily on Murray's body, pushing oxygen into it, causing him to burn hotter and brighter than ever before. He still hadn't moved out of his chair. And then the flames, in an instant, disappeared. He was standing. His skin was crispier than my grandmother's burnt steaks. In a flash, he was in front of and grabbed me by the throat, lifting me above his head effortlessly. He spoke in a raspy voice, as his cords had all but been incinerated. "Jim Donavan, I watched you kill one of my youngest and brightest daughters a year ago. I loved her," I gurgled out. "And now you shall join her, I think." he said, as he opened his mouth dramatically wide, presenting a full array of elongated canines. With my right hand, I pulled out the holy water squirt gun and hit him squarely in the throat with a full blast of pressurized liquid. He dropped me and grasped his throat. He couldn't even scream. His throat was so destroyed. I wheezed and panted as he was on the floor, gasping, clawing at his throat for a gasp of air. I pulled out the big knife from its sheath and said, "Well, one of us will," and cut off his head with one swift motion. It bounced over, bloodlessly, to Mordred, who nudged it with the toe of his very expensive shoes, raised his glass to me, and resumed sipping his beverage. I looked all around the banquet hall. Gordon was right. Cut the head off the snake and the body dies. In this case, dozens of vampires streamed out, fleeing for their lives, knowing that their master was dead. For some reason, they didn't seem to care too much that I had also killed a few other vampires. Go figure. I walked out of the hall. It was on fire anyway. And the quarter-mile back to my car. This morning, I received a manila envelope slid under my door. I opened it. Inside were several official-looking papers labeled Affidavit, and a letter written in a flowing handwriting. A note attached read, "Revenge suits you. I have included several documents to prove Mr. Morrow's innocence in that ridiculous bombing. Do not ask me how I got them. You have done me a boon, and I have repaid it in kind. Entertainment as you provide is rare in these days of poverty. I offer my vow that I shall keep your new paramour safe, as long as she is in her current place of employment. You will find the money wired to you shortly. Our business is concluded once received." Then, in blood, it said, "Seek me out at your peril." It was signed Mordred, Padam, once and future King of England. I'll fax the documents to Pitt and St. Devay, Jack. From what I'm reading, it looks like there was Fey involvement here. Can't imagine what Lana Hawkwood did for them to set those bombs. I'll be investigating them from now on, see if I can get to the bottom of this. Properly clear your name. I'm feeling a little more light. I'll update you, Control, on what I find. Until next time, this is Jim Donavan. Over and out. Pinkerton's Ghosts is a podcast distributed by Superversive Radio, licensed under an attribution non-commercial, share-alike international license. This episode was written by Ken Dickason and performed by the same. Ben Wheeler edits, directs, produces, and herds cats. Ken Dickason performs our audio editing. Visit us on Facebook, read articles on superversivesf.com, or listen to us on unauthorized Acast, iTunes, or Spotify. Contact us through Twitter at @PinkertonsGhosts, email us at pinkertonsghosts@gmail.com, or send us noble messenger possums with messages strapped to their backs. Don't worry, they know how to find us. Thank you for listening, and good luck.